We are here with Rupani, and we're so thrilled and we're so honored and so excited that you're here with us, Om's been teaching workshops in BDSM, Tantra, and man-woman relating for over 2 decades. He has taught internationally from Europe to Australia to the US. And you can find his book, Prerequisites to Ecstasy, on Amazon. So we're going to learn a lot. We've got a lot of fun, juicy questions for Om today.
Welcome to the Sex Reimagined podcast, where sex is shame-free and pleasure-forward. Let's get into the show.
Welcome, Om.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So let's start, since Leah and I are both in the more tantric world, let's start with this crossover between BDSM and Tantra. First describe or, give us the definition. What is BDSM for those of us who really have no idea?
Yeah, or might be new to that idea.
Yeah.
I sincerely doubt that your people need a definition of BDSM, but I will give it to you anyway.
You never know.
BDSM is an acronym. It stands for bondage, discipline. It can be sadism, masochism, or it can also mean submission. It's kind of an umbrella term for people who on the outside level may engage in things like rope bondage, things like impact play. That's what things look like from the outside. If you go to a club, if you go to a dungeon, if you see somebody else doing it, BDSM is very, very visually alluring. So usually people focus on the activities of BDSM. They will say, I watched somebody get tied up. I watched somebody receive a flogging. But there are many layers to the exploration. People come in at the surface level to kind of have those physical experiences. They have seen somebody get tied up and they say, that looks hot. I want to try that. Either I want to try up my partner, I want somebody to tie me up, I want to know what that feels like. And all that is wonderful for people to kind of initially seek the somatic experiences or even almost the aesthetic experiences of BDSM. But I think if you go deeper into the exploration, what shows up for people is that there are these two very significant archetypes that live inside of us, of the dominant and the submissive. And these archetypes, they are very ancient, and the templates for them is already in us. And when people start making this discovery that there is a dom inside of me, or there is a submissive inside of me, the journey kind of switches from, I want to try that particular sexy play, to, I think there is something inside of me that is seeking expression. There's a dom inside of me that wants to be expressed, and there's a submissive inside of me that I have not made room for, that really wants to live and express themselves, certainly in the erotic realm, but it goes even beyond that. So this has been a journey, certainly for me. I see this journey happening for my students over and over, that people come in usually for the sensuality, for the sensation play. And then they usually reach a threshold where it becomes kind of a discovery of self-expression.
Sounds like it's really about becoming more whole, like allowing these shadow parts of yourself to come into the light, to come online more.
I would say very much in the long run, I very much believe that it ends up being a journey of self-discovery. It isn't so much about adding skills onto yourself, although skills are needed, training is needed. But I think what opens up inside of people is not that they're just accumulating skills from the outside, but they are making some discovery about themselves from the inside. And that's always very, it's very moving. I think that's where the biggest journeys are for people. That's where their biggest expressions come from. When they write their gratitude notes, when they write their testimonials. I have so many of them on my website where my courses are listed. I post them regularly on social media. And when people really express what they have gotten out of this, they may mention certainly that their sensual life is richer, but what you will hear more than anything else is, I have discovered parts of myself that were kind of laying dormant before.
So beautiful, so powerful.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's where the biggest impact can be made in our lives, is when we encounter something that allows us to find more of who we are.
Yeah.
And that's way more transformative than just adding another skill set. There's
Very much so.
something, when you can uncover a part of yourself that you haven't had access to, then you feel like your life's been changed.
It does. It feel like self-discovery.
Yeah, cool. So how did you get into this? What's been your genesis story?
Very much as a student. as pretty much everybody in this community, a workshop junkie, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've been in a primary relationship at this point for 33 years.
Wow.
Wow.
I'm 52 years old. I met my primary partner when we were in college. We were 19 and 20.
Oh my goodness. You guys
So
have been on a
as
journey, I bet.
it's been a journey. So as what happens with couples, oftentimes sensuality tends to wane as the years go by, and people say, well, how can I spice things up? What can we add? So we started exploring classes in Tantra, classes in sensuality. We discovered so many wonderful teachers. One of my all-time mentor and at this point collaborator, Laurie Handlers, was one of the first teachers we found in Tantra, and Barbara Corrales and Charles Muir.
Mm.
And we were like voracious students. I was more than her. She usually kind of sends me forward, say, you go figure it out and bring it home to me, which works fine. So it was really very much as, what can I find out there to improve my own life? And that kind of journey, really, this was not a planned trek. I was planning on being a photographer and filmmaker for the rest of my life. If you had caught me, I'm 52 now. I think if you had caught me when I was 30, say, you're going to be teaching BDSM classes. And I'm like, I would have like looked behind me. I'm like, I think you got the wrong
Who are you
guy.
talking to?
It wasn't planned. This is not a mapped out road. And maybe because of the way my temperament is, because of the way my system is, it is kind of scientific and analytical and nerdy. So I brought the same nerdiness to sensuality as well. I really wanted to understand why things work, how things work. And that kind of lent itself to being a teacher, because I want to explain it to myself. And then I found I could explain it to others. And if I could explain it to others, I could teach it to others. So it's kind of slowly moved in that direction. And I think, I believe these things are not accidental. I believe these journeys are guided. There have been so many coincidences, so many encounters that I'm like, this could not all have been a coincidence.
No, it was all meant to be. The world needed you.
Yeah, the people I've encountered, the directions I was nudged into, I'm like, this is not a random journey.
Yeah.
So Leah, I think, met me at one taste. So I started off with studying Tantra. And then I can't even go into the details of the story. I encountered Nicole Dedone in the first time she showed up to New York to present One Taste and 𝐬𝐿𝐵𝐻. I was there in that room in her first presentation at Sexy Spirits by accident, right? And then that journey opened up. And then I kind of accidentally discovered BDSM, and then that big cavern of exploration opened up. And again, the way my brain works, I'm like, we are all working with ourselves. If something works, it has to be related. These are not separate systems.
Right.
If they are affecting our sensuality, if they're giving us more sensual expression, then they're working on our system. So they are interconnected. So that's kind of the way I synthesize it for myself. And then when I teach it, to me, I teach the synthesis that I perceive. Whether it's in stroking, whether it's in BDSM, whether it's in Tantra, breathwork, whatever it is.
Yeah, could you paint us a picture of how you intersect like Tantra and the BDSM world? Like, what does that look like?
So I kind of have like a whole series going on the parallels between Tantra and BDSM. I think one of the main parallels I find between Tantra and BDSM is they are both somatic pathways. They are both somatic wisdoms. Tantra tells us our spirit is not out there in heaven someplace. Our journey is not out there. It is right here. You have a very complex body. It's 7 layered. It's not even 1 layered. You have these chakras, and they hold your memories, and they hold your motivations, and they hold your energies. And this is where your blockages are, and this is where your releases are. It is all here within you. So if you need to work with any part of yourself, you work with it right here. You work with your breath, you work with your energy, you work with your trauma right in your system right here. If you have armoring in your heart, you deal with it right here, right? If you have esteem issues, you deal it right here in the 3rd center. If you have trauma in your 1st center, you deal right in your own base, go through your body. It doesn't put it out there, and it doesn't even put it inside the head the way Western psychology and psychotherapy does. Like, we need to sit you down on a couch. Like, no, we need to get up your ass and release this thing.
They say the soul is found in the asshole.
Right. So that's the great wisdom, I think, in Tantra, is that it says it is your breath, it is your movement, it is your bodies and your subtle bodies, and take charge of it.
Yeah, take
If
responsibility.
your heart chakra, if your throat chakra is blocked, do something about it. And here are some practices you could try. right? If you had oppression and suppression in your childhood and they blocked your expression and now you are like stuttering when talking and you can't express yourself, you can't make any sound during sex. Okay, get into your second chakra, get into your throat. Let's see if we can release this thing. We are the instruments. Here are the blockages. It is a somatic pathway, right? It is not some trick in your mind you're going to release, and it is not some past life thing that is sitting in the Akashic record someplace. It's all right here. And BDSM is exactly the same wisdom. It's like we deal with the body, we deal with the psyche, but in a very somatic way. And so it's a very hands-on, direct practice that puts the individual in charge of their journey.
Mm-hmm.
It's your system. It's your ecstasy. It is your blockages to your ecstasy. Deal with it. Right? And I think it's really brilliant that way, and it's very clear that way. It kind of really brings it down to the individual to be in charge of their evolution, of their release, of claiming the parts of themselves that may have gotten tied up along the way or blocked for whatever reason. So
Well,
I find that very much parallel.
I love how matter of fact you are about it. You have a choice. You could do this, what you've always
Yeah.
done. How's that working for you? Or you can start to
Yeah.
explore something else and learn skills that are going to lead to opening up
Very much.
places inside of you that you didn't even know existed.
So that part of throwing the responsibility on the individual is very much in the framework of BDSM. That is what consent is.
Mm.
It's your system. Do whatever the hell you want with it. You want to put hooks in your back and be dangled from the ceiling? It's your system.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's your system.
You get to
Trust
choose.
me, there have been traditional practices in many religious traditions that have been equally batshit crazy.
Right.
Yeah, sure.
Right.
You think only BDSM people do flogging? Not so.
No.
You can go to your Christian monastic traditions do self-flogging.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Exactly.
They may do it in the form of penance,
As
and we do it in a different framework. But I'm like, these are not coincidences.
mm-hmm.
So much of what we do in one realm, we are doing in the other realm. And I think ultimately what we are doing is we are hacking our own systems.
Mm.
In the more traditional traditions, they had a more spiritual religious framework for it. Tantra and BDSM kind of take away a bunch of that and just put the person and their somatic reality in charge of it, which I think is liberating to some degree.
So what do you say to someone who says they don't know what they want? They know something's missing, but
Yeah.
they're not sure where to start.
Well, I tell people I don't know is a very dangerous sentence.
Mm.
I don't know is a very dangerous, it can be a very fruitful sentence, but if I don't know is being used as a device to shirk responsibility for your experience, you're playing with fire.
Mm.
Because what happens when you say I don't know to a partner is you're saying, well, you decide
Mm-hmm.
what to do, and I will decide whether I find you right or wrong.
Mm-hmm.
That is
It's
a really bad
disempowering.
relation.
Yeah.
It's a very
Mhm.
bad relationship setup.
It is.
To
Yeah.
say, yeah, it's really, that is against taking responsibility for yourself. That is actually not being in consent. There's a better way to do it. I have a whole module on this. The better way to do it is, I don't know what to do in here, but I want to try.
Ah,
Can we proceed gently?
love
Mm.
that.
Lovely.
Can I change
reframe.
my yes to a no? Can we
Mhm.
pause and stop if I feel like it?
Yeah.
Set up your parameters, and then within that say, I would like to have an experience. I would like to make my discovery.
Mm.
I would like to take a small step in this direction and make my discovery. And whichever way it goes, I take responsibility for it.
Right.
And I think that's a
beautiful.
great way to explore a new direction. So I think it is my ride. I take responsibility for it. And if it turns out to be a bad ride, I will know not to do that again.
Yeah, yeah, and I like how you're talking about like setting it up with conversation, like
Yeah.
to kind of set some parameters and boundaries. Like, look, this is new for me. I haven't done this before.
Absolutely.
I would like to try. I don't know how far I want to go with it. I'm not
Yeah.
sure. Is it okay if we pause? You know, are there safety words that
Absolutely.
need to be involved? When you study with Source Tantra, every tantric ritual has a whole initiatory process where you talk about your intentions for the journey and your boundaries and your fears and your desires.
Right.
I'm just curious, do you have something like that inside of the BDSM?
It is absolutely built in.
Right. You're handing it over consciously.
Yeah,
And
you're doing a kind of agreed upon dance together. And I fill this out for every single scene I do. So this is
Yeah.
not something like you fill out once and that's your preference for. No,
even your
every single
primary
scene.
partner you've been with for 33 years?
Yeah, even when we teach, not with my primary partner,
Okay.
not with her.
Okay.
Three decades, you kind of have
there
the
we would just
system
speak
figured
and
out.
there we would talk, but certainly with anybody else. And when we do workshops, every major scene that the students do, they practice filling this out with each other. And so that's they find their yeses. The DOMs fill it out, the submissives fill it out.
Okay.
From their perspective, they find their yeses and they build a scene around their yeses.
And how long does the scene usually go for?
Not very long. I think even a really full scene, I would say an hour most.
Okay.
Yeah. And you can certainly do shorter scenes. You can do a 10-minute scene and it can be really rich.
Oh,
wow.
that's really
Love
neat.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, we're both kind of curious about dirty talk and how that plays into BDSM.
Into dirty talking.
Yeah.
Whether you're the receiver or the giver, how dirty talk plays a role in BDSM and Tantra?
Dirty talking is like the layman's term. In BDSM, you would be a lot more specific on what are you doing with the dirty talking. So one form of dirty talking would be simply kind of a sensual connection. Just saying, I love this part of your body. I love the way this part of your body is looking right now. This is what I want to do to you. That can almost be a form of objectification. That can almost be a form of expressing your desire for your partner. And who doesn't want that?
Right. It's hot.
But that's really not the limit of using your words and communication and quote unquote dirty talking during a scene. Because if you take it further, it would kind of go into what we would refer to as humiliation play. Do you want to be called a whore? Do you want to be slut shamed? Do you want to go into those areas where the words you're afraid somebody will call you, you want your lover to call you that at the right moment? Now you're in psychological play territory because you're playing with your archetypes, you're playing with your identity, you're playing with your fears, and that can take many, many turns. Right?
So powerful.
At one level, it can be objectification. At another level, it can be hit me in my insecurities. It can be worship. It can be very positive. That's the easier part. Who doesn't like being worshipped? But the other part can be humiliate me for the body parts that I'm insecure about.
Yeah.
One of the most common places men like verbal play is humiliate me on my small cock.
And so what is that?
Yeah. Why is that?
Because we are carrying this charge within us anyway.
Right. So let's bring it to the light.
Every man fears he can't satisfy his woman. Every man fears he is not equipped and she will find somebody else who is better equipped, who will thrill her more, and she will leave me for him. Every woman fears my man's going to find a harder woman, younger woman, and I am aging and these bitches keep getting younger. Fuck them all. So we don't shy away from any of this shit when we do BDSM. We go into these areas of our psyche, these narratives we are running anyway, these fears that we are holding anyway. And instead of tucking them under the carpet, we just hit them head on.
So there's a real bravery involved in getting into.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. This is also why the container is needed, the agreement is needed, because you can't go in this thing unprepared and just it'll be disastrous. You have to, as a submissive, has to ask for it. Right?
Yeah.
The submissive should say, I am getting insecure about this part. I need to hear these words so I can deal with this fear. And here's the thing. Once you deal with it, there's so much sensation in it that if you're able to claim it, not only could you have release, oftentimes it get converted to turn on.
Tell us more about that. So you're going into these places.
This is the odd thing. Again, this is also very parallel to the tantric wisdom that energy is energy. And if you release the energy, it will be an orgasmic experience. Why? Because orgasm is nothing but the movement of energy. And these places where you're holding these clumps of energy, if you find a way to release them, it may create tremendous amount of pleasure and release in your system.
I really want to highlight that. I think you're saying something that's really powerful. Oftentimes when I talk about how would I define an orgasm, it's energy and movement. And when energy is moving, it's pleasurable. It's like laughing or crying or good poop. It's like it feels good to move.
Absolutely.
And when energy is stuck, it's painful. It's like my bad back or my bad knee. Right. But we have these bad thoughts that we often keep so covered. Like nobody see me. Nobody see me in this pain. Nobody see me in these stuck thoughts. And in fact, I don't even want to look in the mirror with those thoughts. And so I think what's really powerful about this like messaging and how these two places can come together is, what if you have someone, and in Tantra we talk about it's a little more of that worshipful, has a little more of a gentle packaging around it. That's like, can you give the pain a sound? But what I see that's different, that's more radical, that's more like really kind of in your face. But I can also see how seeing yourself in the pain and in the contraction of what you're afraid will be exposed is equal to the amount of pleasure and relief you can feel when you are that brave, when you have someone that's kind of holding and saying, no, you don't get to be in denial. Yeah. We're doing this together, Yeah,
very much so.
We're mapping this out. You're not alone.
Exactly. So you kind of laid out the mat. I mean, I can just clarify 2 points that I think really show up, which is this stuff is here already. Mm-hmm. These narratives are here already.
Yeah.
And if they're here already, they're blocking movement and pleasure.
Which is important because if they're here already, you're not imposing yourself on someone. Because I think there's a fear that if I go into BDSM, someone's going to impose something on me that might be dangerous that I'm afraid of.
So that was the second point, which is to do this kind of play well, the Dom is completely uninvested in the submissive's narrative.
Okay.
Right. So if a man says, humiliate me for my small cock, if the female dominatrix is doing her job well, she's actually doesn't care what size his cock is.
Mm-hmm. Right.
She only cares that this is the narrative you are holding.
Yeah, that's right.
It's your narrative. It's like it's your knot in your body, and I need to go address that knot. I'm not invested in your knot.
Right.
Ding,
it's
ding,
your
ding.
knot.
A good therapist will take it on.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is also what the Dom training is needed for. The Dom actually holds a kind of a cool, indifferent energy. This is the submissive shit. I don't really give a damn. This is your narrative. I am interested in your release, but I'm not interested in where you are stuck. It's not my stuff. I am not judging you where you are judging you.
Yeah.
But to move your knot, I need to get in there and exert pressure, and that may hurt like hell. That's the process. But I'm not really invested either way. I'm neither invested in inflicting pain on you, nor do I take your knot personally. If you want to keep your knot, keep your knot. Right. I don't care.
And it seems like there's a threshold where the pain then becomes the pleasure, which is a very specific turning point. Is there anything you would want to say about that?
It is. I think it is a very complex structure that oftentimes this happens. There's a wonderful quote. There's a wonderful book by Jack Moran, The Erotic Mind. And there are many troubling premises and insights in there. And one of them is we eroticize our traumas. Mm-hmm. We eroticize these clumps of energies in our system. Now, this is a very uncomfortable fact. Why do we do this? I don't know. From a tantric energetic perspective, you can say, well, it really is energetic. Everywhere there's a clump of energy, once you release that energy, it is going to be orgasmic. Right? So in a way, where you are stuck is kind of a source for orgasm. Where you're stuck is where energy can be reaped for pleasure. So it's kind of a double bind. Where you have a knot in your body is exactly where release and pleasure is possible.
That concept reminds me of how the core erotic theme operates, that there's oftentimes a bridge between something that we've been ashamed of early on that gets sort of, that the psyche gets an imprint from. And
absolutely,
it oftentimes goes unexplored because we're we are ashamed of it. Whereas if we can look at it, then it opens up to all these like hot sexual movies.
Right. I often joke with my students that if there were absolutely no sexual repression or trauma in the human race, there would be no kink or BDSM.
Yeah, I love that.
It's tension and release.
Yeah.
It's tension and release. We are all going to be traumatized. We are all going to get fucked over. We are all going to be humiliated. We are all going to have contractions in our system. And if you can find a way to release and reclaim those, it's kind of fun. That's the game we are playing all along. If we came here as completely immaculate Buddhas who never get stained by life, there'd be nothing to release. It'd be very boring. And there would be no kink, there would be no tantra, there'd be no need. We would be just perfect. We'd be like perfect running engines that don't need a tune-up.
Right. But we live in these physical bodies.
Certainly not but that's certainly not the human game we are here to play. So I don't think we have anything to worry about.
Do you have any, are there any like miracle stories, maybe around like someone transforming their health in some way that you can share with us?
Biggest miracle stories happen when people release things in ways that are completely inexplicable, right? So I can give you one. This is a story Lori and I like to tell because it happened in our class, right? I don't even know how to make this sound coherent. So I'll just give it to you.
Okay.
We had a woman in our class who was Chinese. She was born in China. Her parents did not want a daughter. Parents wanted a son. Chinese people prefer sons. All through her childhood, all through her youth, her parents basically said, "You're not wanted. We wanted a boy." You can imagine what that did to that woman's psyche. Her esteem, her desirability, her place in the world, very deep first chakra trauma. You're not wanted by your own parents. They would like tell her that, right? Deep wound. Now, how the hell do you release that wound? I have no idea. I wouldn't even try. But this woman, after being in therapy for 15 years and doing many things, she came into our class, and this was just an exercise. She did like a 15-minute exercise in rope bondage, tying your wrists together. It was just an exercise. And she just had a meltdown, right? She had a complete meltdown, and which is completely fine. People go into process all the time, and we make room for it. It's part of the thing we do in Tantra. Anything that happens is okay. As long as it's genuine and the process is real, it's great. And somehow from that tiny rope scene, she got a release in that part of her thing. I have no idea how. I couldn't start to claim on how that release happened through rope bondage. But things like this happen in this circle, in this world on a regular basis, where people will say, this scene just released something I have not been able to let go for 5, 10, 15 years in therapy.
Yeah.
Right. And I think the logic of it is exactly the same that logic Tantra uses, is we are moving the system somatically. And so much of our modern psychotherapeutic process is sitting your ass down on a couch and yakking away.
From your head.
From your head, which doesn't really move anything.
No.
Right. It's like the Woody Allen scenario of the guy who's been in therapy for 15 years, knows everything about himself, has not become one bit less neurotic after 15 to 25 years of therapy. He's as messed up as he was years ago, but now he knows a lot about his neurosis.
Yeah, we have to
He knows exactly the origin, what my mother did, that event when I was 7 years old. That's how I got messed up. I'm still messed up.
He's very clear about the storyline.
Right. But I think when we address our system somatically, this can happen in Tantra, this can happen in breath work, this can happen in emotional release work. This happens in medicine journeys. Medicine journeys are also a hammer to the system when they work well. They just go in there and they dislodge something that is really old, and all of a sudden you don't have any choice but to deal with it and hopefully release it from your system. But it doesn't do it via a path of you understanding yourself. Right. It just goes and hits the energy so hard that movement just results from it. Yeah. So I think this is the way any path that addresses us somatically has that power to do. And it's very hard to track down what exactly happened. What hit what and what released what.
Can you say more about the power of separating the role of giver and receiver?
It's absolutely crucial. It's absolutely crucial, certainly in the BDSM format. This is also where people learn that these are almost like two beautiful archetypes. And the best analog for that is this is like partner dancing, like ballroom partner dancing, like Argentinian tango, like the waltz. Two people are coming together. They are dancing complementary steps. They're not dancing identical steps. They're dancing complementary steps. But when they dance them well together, they're creating one dance. Right? The Dom and Sub dynamic is very much that dynamic. I think in the tantric model also, there's white tantra, but if you're working with a partner, generally there is this polarity of giving and receiving, that one person is creating a space and handling somebody else's system masterfully. And the other person is kind of allowing themselves to be at effect and surrendering their system and allowing their system to be moved. So in a way they can't move it themselves.
How does that relate back into the pouring back into the Dom? My guess, and please add to this or correct me if I'm wrong, is that when one is deeply received by someone who's surrendering, who's allowing the presence of that person deeply affect them, that's a part of what the giver or the Dom then receives back, is someone trusting their body to them.
Right. I think that is also true. I think being received well is a gift, right? So I give people 4 ways to win. People always argue for having only 2 ways to win. I don't know why that is. So yes, it's great if let's say I give to you and I'm masterful in what I'm giving to you, and you receive me fully and graciously. If you receive me fully and graciously, that is deeply satisfying to me. Mm-hmm. You received from me and I gave to you, and there was a wonderful transference. So was that interaction satisfying for me? Absolutely. Mm-hmm. But the energy usually also traveled from me to you. Mm-hmm. Right? And if I keep pouring into you, even if you keep receiving me graciously and I keep pouring into you, I'm going to get exhausted at some point.
Right.
And believe it or not, you're going to turn bratty at some point.
Right.
Yeah, totally.
You bet your bottom dollar.
If I keep giving to you and you keep receiving, your graciousness will actually go down, because human beings are assholes.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
We are.
Yeah. True that.
I saw this at one taste. It didn't really work doing it one-sidedly. Mm-hmm. Energy really has to go back. Besides, I have desires and needs too. Uh-huh. Right. When do I get to be in the receiving position? Yeah. And when do you get to be in the master position? Mm-hmm. Where you get to be in your mastery and you get to move my system. Don't you want that mastery also? Mm-hmm. Right. So why rob yourself of that? Right? And if I stay completely in the giving position all the time, I will get exhausted and resentful. That's true. And this happens in BDSM dynamic. It's a common pitfall. We have a word for it. We call it top drop. Okay, Doms usually come in and they want to give and they want to pour out because they want to be in their mastery, because they are good at it. Uh-huh. They want submissives who can receive wealth from them, but if all they do is they pour out, they're going to burn out.
Mm. Well, you see that in marriages all the time too. One direction.
All the time.
Because you've got one partner who's the initiator and the other partner that might be the avoider. And you see that sexual dynamic become really frustrating. Yeah.
And I think people rob themselves of their mastery when they only say, my job is to receive graciously. Receiving graciously is beautiful. But if you never learn to handle your partner's system, I think that's half the journey.
Yeah, in Tantra, there's a real emphasis of like being in balance. Like notice where are your weaknesses, and that's the thing you want to go study. You want to strengthen the part that you do avoid. You want to strengthen the part that you're not good at. Right. You know, and most people come in the door going, well, I'm either a really good receiver, I'm a really good giver, and I kind of suck at the other one. Yeah. And to allow that to be your challenge.
Yeah, so again, I think this becoming more whole.
Mm-hmm. Very much. I think that even this conversation has so many layers. So one way you can cap this off is this. People, again, often think that I have burdens I'm carrying and I need to receive healing. And if I receive the right healing, I will finally be free. Mm-hmm. Right? And you take that to the right guru, to the right master, and they will say, go work in the kitchen 12 hours a day. And you're like, what? Mm-hmm. Go clean the toilets. Go do this labor 16 hours a day. Mm-hmm. I came here to receive healing. I came to receive your rays of healing. No, go work in the fucking toilet. Uh-huh. Go pour into other people. Go pour into people who have less than you.
Right. Then you're maybe not so
you do that for 6 months and you realize, oh my God, I can't even remember my bullshit anymore. Mm-hmm. So what makes you think healing is only happen when you're receiving shit from people? What do you think the only way healing happens is when Jesus is shining his light on you?
Mm-hmm.
What if the path to healing is you go with Jesus and go help the lepers?
That's
you
right.
pour out.
You go be in service. It's
And I
same thing
think
with
this,
AA. You know, it's the same message.
That's why healers
very
get so
much so.
much healing from their
Yeah.
work.
Yeah, I think this is where I think modern healing meets narcissism. This is where people go into workshop after workshop after workshop, receive healings, receive sessions, receive healings. And I'm like, amazingly, you're not healed yet. What's going on?
Yeah, so you still need to keep going. What's up with that?
Yeah. Maybe you need to go wash the latrine 12 hours a day. See if that changes things. So I don't really even believe in the premise that the only way to get healed is to have other people pour into you. I don't really believe that. I think that premise is flawed. And I think the modern lifestyle, especially the work stop lifestyle, the retreat lifestyle, is demonstrating that to the nth degree, because people have become consumptions of experiences. They put their money down to receive experiences. There are people, I see people doing this even with medicine journeys. I'm going to do another ayahuasca journey. Here's $500. Hit me. Oh, that didn't work. Here's another $500. Hit me again. What makes you think this is the only path to you releasing your bullshit from the past?
Yeah, there's an integration process that happens when you then, pour out, when you give.
Very much so.
You get to learn what you're capable of and who you can actually be.
This is why most traditions have had. In India, there is a very simple and big concept of seva, of pouring out.
Yeah.
Right. If you join any order, they will basically give you labor to do. And that is your spiritual path. They will say, but I want healing. This is how you heal. You serve other people.
That's right.
You don't sit here healing. You don't get healed by sitting at your guru's feet all day long, listening to the beautiful words. You work your ass off.
Because many times in our depression, in our suffering, in our anxiety, it's so self-consumed. You're so over-identified with all the miserable sensations that you're experiencing, all your suffering, all your misery. It's so self-centered. You're really like obsessed with it. And if you can redirect your attention from you and the hell that's inside and start thinking about how can I serve somebody else, then you become less self-centered. And you get to experience this opening inside of yourself, and then you get to see your efforts help other people flourish. And then again, now you've got that system of rebound.
And now we're living in this world, in this society where it's iPhones and I this and I have everything and I
I actually think this is also the crucial flaw in the psychotherapeutic model. It just dwells on the person who's coming in for the session. They're just paying money to talk about themselves all day long.
Rather than, and it's, it's so synonymous with Chinese medicine, which the whole, Taoist philosophy behind Chinese medicine is like, let's put so much good into that organ that the bad doesn't have any room to be there anymore. Yeah.
So I think as long as we have a balance, we're on the right track. I'm not saying we need to get rid of receiving from other people, but I think in today's culture, I do see kind of a binging, consumptive energy that I'm going to just receive healings and receive insights, receive therapy.
So how does that relate with because oftentimes in the BDSM conversation, what I hear a lot about is, I identify as being a dom, or I identify as being a sub. How does that play into this thing that we're talking about, this balance? Because it sounds like what you're suggesting is that because we want this balance to be there, are you also saying that it's equally as important for you to learn the skill set of dom and submissive, or can someone just stay in one realm?
Most people tend to stay in one realm. Okay. Once again, I think the main reason for that is these are not extraneous qualities people are taking on. When people come into my class, when people come into the Tantra meets BDSM class that I teach with Lori, we have all students play the dom and the sub in every exercise. And the point of that is you make your discoveries. You feel into both archetypes and you feel which archetype resonates with your system more. This is a process of discovery. This is not a process of putting something externally onto you. Maybe few people will discover they enjoy both archetypes. There are those kind of shapeshifters. It's a matter of temperament, personality, how you're constructed. Most people will tend to gravitate saying, the submissive archetype is calling me more. The dom archetype is calling me more. So our job as teachers is to give people enough of those experiences of occupying those spaces so they can make that discovery. And the other advantages of playing both roles is this is kind of a two-person dance. It's good if you kind of know the entire dance. It's good if you know both positions.
Yeah.
Because they're not separate. And it's good to know both positions and then realize I kind of enjoy this more. This fits more with my temperament.
Mm.
And within that, this is about creating functioning relationships. If you realize you're leaning towards this archetype, you're like, well, then I need to find a partner who's this archetype. And then how do we make this thing work? We make this thing work by nourishing each other. We make this work by taking care of each other. It really isn't complicated.
Yeah, so that's a great lead in, is like how does the practice of BDSM then play into like long-term relationships? The ways that people relate to each other.
My best solution when long-term couples come to me for coaching is to teach them BDSM.
Love that.
My goal for them is go from husband and wife to dom and sub.
Yes.
Directly.
Yes.
Because by the time they come into coaching or therapy, their husband and wife archetypes have fallen flat. They're not working anymore. Their polarization has disappeared. Husband and wives hate each other and resent each other at this point, right? They have both miraculously come to a place where they both feel I'm giving more than I'm receiving in this relationship, which is mathematically impossible. But it happens all the time. Ask people who are at their last thread in a relationship, and they will both say, I'm pouring more into this relationship than I'm getting out of it. I'm like, that's actually theoretically not possible.
Oh, yeah. We see that all the time.
Yeah, all the time.
But the archetype is so messed up that they almost need a new template. And my best offer I can make people is learn to occupy the dom archetype, learn to occupy the submissive archetype, learn to create small scenes within these two archetypes and see if that will revive something in you. Oftentimes it does. It's the best solution I have. It's not a foolproof solution, but it is the best solution I have found of reviving stale and resentful old relationships that are not working anymore. It certainly can like put a surge in the erotic department right away, which is not nothing, which is huge.
That's huge.
It's huge.
Massive.
It is huge.
That can change the entire relationship.
Yeah, that gives hope.
I can't tell you how many therapists and couples therapists, regularly trained couples therapists, do my work. And I'm not exaggerating. All of them will confide, we know nothing about Eros. We have no fucking idea how to create better sex between couples. The number one reason they come to us is because they're not having sex, and we haven't a clue how to recharge their erotic life. We have not been trained, right? So I think academia and traditional therapy has really dropped the ball in this area. The best thing I've seen traditional therapy do is they're good at kind of umpiring better communication between a couple. They are good at that. They will get them to start talking to each other without biting each other's head off, which is not nothing.
Which is
But as far as reaching beyond that point and really sparking their Eros again, they have no clue.
Yeah.
So that's why when they come into my class and they hear the conversation we're having right now, they're like, well, this works. Right? So but they're not trained in this. They're not trained in this. They have no idea how to bring this to their clients.
So what's your first actionable step when working with a couple that are in that exact position?
Come and learn the basics of dom-sub dynamic and learn to occupy those archetypes and have short scenes with each other when you are stepping into your dom archetype, when you're submissive archetype. Leave behind the husband and wife, the boyfriend and the girlfriend, the man and the woman who have been together for 15 years and now can barely look at each other. Try on these new archetypes, this new dance, and see if you can meet each other in a fresh place that's pleasurable to you both.
And of course,
see if you can nourish each other in a way that is new and functional at this point.
Yes, exactly. And all of this is equally applicable to bisexual relationships and
absolutely. Yeah, genders. This is the great part. It doesn't really apply to all relationships. BDSM, if anything, is a gift to us from the gay and queer community. BDSM is a gift to us originally from gay men and leather men.
That's right.
They have been kind of the secret mystery school that has cultivated this area because they badly needed polarity.
Right.
They needed polarity.
Right.
Right. Today we are all over the politics, But at least even 20 years ago, they're like, nope, I'm the husband, he's the wife. They understood there needs to be a difference. There needs to be a polarity. I'm the daddy, he's the little boy. They understood all that dynamic. They understood there's a lot of heat and sex in it, right?
That's
We are kind of
so cool.
almost inheriting their wisdom so that straight couples can now do daddy little girl play.
Yeah.
We are receiving their gifts, right?
So, I'm so curious, it's such I mean, this journey found you, this path came to you and has been birthed through you. And it's a very unique one. It's a very powerful one. And I'm just curious, like, what's been one of the more challenging pieces for you of just, having this expressed through you in your life?
I think at the personal level, it has been dealing with the misconception around what dominance and submission is, around what a dom does, around being a dominant man, because these are not popular archetypes right now.
Right.
So anybody who hears this, first of all, people don't understand what consensual domination and submission is, right? This is the big schism. When people hear dominance and submission, they assume these people are damaged. Some people is abusing somebody who is just too weak to defend themselves. They assume non-consensual domination and submission. And that's a really ugly field to walk into. It's an ugly field to have to defend yourself in over and over again. That they assume only damaged people are doing this, only abusive people are doing this to people who are suckers for abuse.
Right.
Because they don't really understand two healthy, sane, consensual people are doing this dance together of their own volition for their own benefit. And they're only coming together because they're deciding to, and they can walk away at any point. The outer culture really doesn't understand this clarity. They don't have a clear concept of consensual domination and submission. And that's the biggest kind of ugliness you have to walk into if you go public with this. Because there's a lot of that energy out there, right? And again, all the places where there is wounding in our culture of non-consensual domination and submission, it flares up. So, blunt example, if you see a woman beating the shit out of a man, nobody gives a shit. You go, girl. It's about time. You slap that man. But what are they doing? They're approaching it from a political angle. They think men have suppressed women. It's time for women to beat the crap out of men. I'm like, they're both ugly ideas. That's not what people are doing. When you see a woman female dominatrix handling a male submissive, that is not what's happening there. It is two loving people doing something. But the political mind will say, a female dominatrix stomping over a male submissive. Yeah, about time. You show a male dom slapping two submissives, they will want to put you in jail. They think it's two different phenomenons. They're not.
Yeah.
It's a dom and a sub. Consensual, both of them. But the political mind interprets two things entirely differently. You want even a chargier example? Here it is. See a black woman beating the shit out of two black men, two white men. A black hot dominatrix, all strapped up, has got two muscled white boys on a fucking collar, dragging them across the room. Everybody will go, yeah. Yeah.
All right.
How about a white dom dragging two black women in collars across the room?
No, totally different
Flare
vibe.
up.
Yeah.
Flare up. And understandable. Understandable. It is hitting the historical triggers.
Yeah.
It is hitting the unhealed wound, especially in this country. This black and white thing is in this country. It's not everywhere. So when Americans will see a white man dominating two black women, they only see one thing.
Right.
They see abuse. They see the perpetuation of abuse. They see patriarchy. And I'm like, all your perceptions are bullshit. That's not what's happening in any of these configurations. What's happening in all of these configurations is consenting adults are coming together and saying, I want this for me.
Yeah, so
I want this for me. And people, we have a hard time, whether it's me as a public speaker and teacher, or whether it's the practitioners who want to share even with their girlfriends. I like doing this. You run into this real burden of history, of culture, of the trauma that is in society, around non-consensual domination and submission. People don't understand consensual domination and submission.
I think that's a really interesting tie-in to the beginning of our conversation with the question around what if you don't know? What if your answer is, I don't know what I want? I don't know what I need. That's the danger of the I don't know. When we have an uninvestigated archetypical viewpoint, it's not investigated. We don't know the pleasure that's possible in these other parts of our mind that holds fear. Right. And so that's like the outer expression of the uninvestigated self and of sexuality, of pleasure, of what's covered up in secret, the uninvestigated parts of our shame. And I think that's an interesting circle back as we kind of round out.
It is a circle back. And there's a lot of energy stuck in there. And if you go in there and play it and release it, there's a lot of eros stuck in there.
Yeah.
Well, here's the dark part about all this. It's not that all that trauma is not real. It's that if you actually learn how to play with that trauma, you can really get off on all of it.
Yes, you can. And that's the happy, healed, whole self.
That is the happy, whole reason part, but that part is extremely uncomfortable to people.
Yeah, but that's the reason
that you can take all these traumas and flip them on their ear and have an orgasm on them.
Yes, and so I just want to, like, future tenses for the audience is this is why you investigate that part of you that doesn't know.
But you need courage.
Yeah, you need
and
courage.
Support. I
and
think you need guidance
and support
and some hand holding.
You can't have
guidance is good.
You can't have contempt before investigation, and there's a lot of contempt before investigation in the BDSM realm.
Yeah. So, please tell us a little bit about your gift that you so graciously are bestowing on our audience members.
Actually, it segues into the conversation here because people have such a hard time finding an entry point into BDSM because they are so burdened with all this thing that I'm like, there are many, many people who are never going to come into a paid offering.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, I need to offer stuff for free for people so they can at least come and without any investment actually have these conversations and at least take small steps into examining this. And to that degree, I have a free kind of a course conversation on the topic of the taboo of feminine submission. I think it's the biggest taboo there is in our culture right now. And it's a free course on my teaching platform at 𝐬𝐻_Rupani.com and doesn't cost you anything. And if you're at least interested in thinking about this and hearing some viewpoints and reading about it, you can do that self-study course and conversation. The other one is kind of bold and crazy on my part. I'm like, I want people to see what real BDSM scenes are like.
Cool.
Because people have very bad ideas. So I've created a whole library of real scenes.
That's amazing. That's an amazing
people can watch
gift.
For free.
Yeah.
And it's also on my platform. You can watch for free. I have demos in there because I made a kind of a demo and scene library because every class I teach, I have to demo body safety. I have to teach them basic rope technique. I have to teach them basic impact play technique. So I'm like, instead of repeating these modules over and over again, I'm going to videotape them, put them in. So when I teach my classes, I can send my students like, go please watch these demos.
Yeah, so there's never been a better opportunity to dip your toes in, my friends.
Yeah, and then you can watch what real scenes are like and even hear about how these scenes were constructed, what the desires were that went into constructing these scenes, so you can demystify it for yourself.
Those are powerful gifts, two of them.
Huge.
Thank you so much.
I have others on the way, but these two are already up and running on 𝐬𝐻_Rupani.com.
Fantastic.
Great. Well, I'm looking forward to, this is a newer world for me, and it's
I know. I'm like, when's the next workshop?
To kind of move in that direction, but it's so powerful when we begin to challenge ourselves to open our mind, become more educated, and that way you can make an informed opinion. Don't create judgments that you haven't even explored.
Listen, nobody is really interested in changing anybody's mind. Quite frankly, bluntly put, nobody's that interested in you. Nobody's trying to convince you of anything.
You're not
this
that
is entirely
special.
up to you.
You're not that special,
Nobody
sweetie.
drags anybody into this realm. People come because their own desires are calling them. Nobody forced women to buy 150 million copies of 50 Shades of Grey. Nobody held a gun to your head. Women bought that book. Women masturbated to that book. Nobody made you do it. So there's a lot of desire around this, and make it accessible to women, and they run at it.
Yeah.
So I think we are naive if we think anybody's trying to sell you anything on here, or this is a novel concept. And I couldn't get away from this book. I'm like, everybody told me this is a crappy book. And I'm standing in line buying I don't know what. And there it is at the drugstore. And I'm like, I got to read this fucking book.
It's in my face.
I have to read what this book is about. So it's like nobody made that book that popular. Women made that book that popular. Nobody forced it on people.
Yeah. Well, the shadows, right? The shadow side of the feminine that hasn't gotten to be expressed. And part of it is this, like these eons of oppression for the feminine voice and feminine sexuality.
And the feminine wants to be ravished. There's no two ways around it.
And there ain't nothing wrong with that.
That's right. Spank me and feed me cake, okay?
That's right.
So might as well learn how to do it well.
Tie me up and give me chocolate.
This was really fun. Thank you for bringing us inside your work. There's so many questions, and what a beautiful place to actually leave a connection is with more questions. It's a wonderful place to keep coming back to.
Thanks for having me. It was great.
Yeah, thank you,
Okay, blessings. We'll see you all in the next interview.
Now, our favorite part, the dish.
Welcome back. It's Sex Reimagined with Dr. Willow and Leah. And wow, we are processing our conversation with Rupani.
Yeah, there was a lot to process from that one. I think especially for Leah and I, who tend to be more on the like energetic tantric side of sexuality, expansion,
sacred. Like this is a definitely
the spiritual side.
Yeah, I don't want to say it's departure from that, but
no,
it's
almost like a deepening. Yeah.
Yes, that was what my experience was. I don't think I could have been ready for what I'm ready for now. I needed a softer approach first. Tantra was that gentle, sacred, worshipful, reverent. I needed that reverence as my starting point. But at this junction in my life, like the next big turn is going in that direction, I think.
I am feeling the same. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I totally agree. I mean, and you've been on this path, you've been teaching Tantra much, much longer than I have. And so, it's so fascinating that, whatever, we're both right now, we're like, oh, okay, there's this other doorway, there's this other threshold to cross through. And I was just speaking with another friend the other night that she had crossed that threshold like 2 years ago. And she was telling me just like how much she has learned about herself through that process. And then I had another friend or a client actually who was like, I'm interested in it, but I don't know if I'm ready for it, because she hasn't even really had good sex in her life. She hasn't even really had that experience. And so there really is a readiness, I think, that comes on your sexual expansion journey for opening yourself up to the possibility of BDSM and what that means. I mean, God, there are so many possibilities within what BDSM is. Remind us, Leah, what does it stand for? It's bondage. What's the D?
So the BDSM definition, B is for bondage, D is for discipline or domination, S is for sadism or submission, and then the M is for masochism.
Yeah, so breaking all of that down is like there's just in the term itself, BDSM, there's like worlds within worlds right there.
Yeah, world within worlds, totally. One of the things that helped me just with the erotic blueprints is the way that they defined kink. I mean, aside from, whatever's taboo for you, there's two branches to the kink world. One is you lean towards more sensation play, or the other one is you lean towards more psychological play. And the psychological play was the thing that was sort of sparking me. I'm really kind of squirmy when it comes to like too much sensation or like scratching or anything that hurts. And I'm not really into things that vibrate or, like the whole idea of like knife play and blood play. Although I can kind of conceptualize why that's a turn on for somebody else, it just doesn't draw me in. But what does is the psychological shit. you know?
Uh-huh. Again, the brain being like the most powerful sexual organ in your body. Yeah, I can get down with both. I think. I mean, I have just recently gotten into a little bit more of the kink, and which you would call bondage, you know, being tied up. What is it? What do they call it? The Japanese tying.
Yeah.
It's not like tied up to the bedpost per
it's
se.
like knots. It's really beautiful.
It's
they
gorgeous.
Take ropes, they tie it in a special way and to bind the body in these different positions. It's so pretty. You should really look
pretty.
At images.
Yeah, and it feels
but it looks
really
scratchy.
Well, it depends. Yeah, you don't use a scratchy rope.
Scratchy ass rope. Can we get some silk rope, please?
Silk rope. That was the ticket for me. We used some nice soft silk rope.
Okay.
Oh yeah, and it felt so sexy. It just felt so hot to be like. And then once it was on, it was like then it was being handled by the rope, you know. So there was this submission piece that happened for me where the other person was more in that dominating role. So that's a big part of BDSM that Om was sharing with us is trying on those two roles. You know, when in his workshops, that's the first thing you do. You try on, am I a dominatrix or am I a submissive? Like what feels like more resonant in my body and do I get more pleasure out of? And so I thought that was really cool. And that was a surprise to me. I didn't know that it was he's like, some people can go back and forth, but most people are one or the other. I don't know. I can't wait to really dive in more because I feel like I might be able to rock both.
Yeah, I feel like I can probably rock both, but where I will get most pleasure is probably being a submissive. Because I think I can be such a control freak in other aspects of my world and life. I have a very high developed masculine, which I love. It helps me be self-employed and, you know, I can be self-directive and meet deadlines and all of that stuff. But where my greatest edge is dropping in more to like giving myself over to something else. Like that's a big growth piece.
Yeah.
I can get a lot of pleasure when there's enough trust. Fuck.
Yeah. And also when they know what they're doing and they know how to dominate you in a way that you really can submit and can just relax into that. I've got some clients who are into this realm of sexuality and, you know, same thing for her. She is such a like driven, does everything. It's got the whole family. She's always in control, always doing. So for her to drop into that submissive state just that's where the pleasure's at for her. Yeah. It's really interesting.
You know, even in my work as a Dakini years ago, one of my favorite sessions was called Worshipping the Goddess sessions, where I could actually teach people using my own body as a template of how to really pleasure and open the feminine. And I think one of the things that turned me so on about those sessions, and a lot of people, women in my industry, don't choose to offer that kind of work, I think because it scares them to be somewhat out of control. For me, it was like, are you kidding me? Someone is hanging on your every word. They want to get this thing right. They're so present. They're paying so close attention to the response of your body. Like that to me is such a turn on. So to have someone devote themselves to really listening to every cue in my body, to being responsive to like the tremor and the opening and the closing and my body language and my breath and my sound and my like, you know, that place that opens into emotion, you know, to trust someone so thoroughly. Like I'll never forget one of these like most epic dates with my husband, Matt. We were just getting to know each other. And we were playing with these tantric roles of like separating the role of giver and receiver. And I was a receiver that night. And I just like, I had let go so big in that session that normally things that someone would try to do to me that I would brace myself for and like kind of flinch back or be uncertain or tighten up. I didn't. I completely opened and softened. And then I had the biggest orgasmic release. And then afterward, I had the biggest emotional release. And I just sobbed and sobbed and sobbed. Beautiful. And he sobbed too. Like it was this magic moment. And we'll probably go into that a little deeper in the episode. If you want to look for it, it's the episode on spiritual sex. There's a place of like spiritual connection that opens there. And I share that story because I think that that's really what was illustrating in this idea where BDSM and Tantra intersect. There's this place within that deep surrendered state and in that deep holding the trust and being that like strong, dominant post. It's like having the Shiva post. You're really like honoring that state of holding the space and holding the center and holding what is happening. It's like this really kind of deep, like my whole body just wants to like get really grounded and centered and deepen. There's something about that magical world that does open us to spirit and to having these like profound experiences through our sexual connection.
Yeah, it's so powerful. And one of the things that he highlighted was if you're working with a dominatrix or someone who's in that dominant role in that position, the point really is for you to discover yourself inside of that submissive role. The dominatrix or whatever does not care about your blocks around, the way your body looks or your insecurities about your sexuality, or like that's not at the forefront for them. What really is,
that was an interesting point you made, wasn't it?
Yeah, they're really just there to hold a container for you to discover.
Yeah, but your story is so not of value or interest to them.
Yeah, they don't care, which is great. It's so brilliant, especially if you know that going in. And I'm curious if dominatrixes, like professional ones out in the world, if they set that up, probably not, I would imagine. But and different story with you and your husband. Obviously, he did care, but
yeah, but he didn't know what he was doing enough to even know what was happening. He was just following it,
Right. Yeah. So that's sort of like the unknowing.
Yeah, it's being in the moment. It's the thing that you always talk about. It's like that depth of presence. It's like really being there. Mm-hmm. And I think like when he was talking about like, look, the dominatrix, like they don't give a fuck about like your story. And actually, I really resonated with that as a dakini. That's just your fucking story, man. Your story doesn't actually matter. All that does is keep you trapped. And I'm not actually interested in what's keeping you trapped. I'm interested in what's going to move you forward. Yeah, so what's going to open you up. Come on, get in there, do the work, confront the bullshit, and let's keep going. You don't have to impress me. Yeah. My heart's already invested in who you really are. It's right. Not in all the other stuff.
Yeah, that's right. As professional dakinis or dominatrixes, whatever, we're looking into where's the lock and key? Where can we open this door? Where can we move you to the other side of the story that's held you back for so long?
It's like your victimness is it's time to move on.
Boring. Move on.
Yeah, it's like stop holding yourself back. Blah blah blah. So
we all have a story. Yeah. We've all been a victim.
Right. It's time to like take real responsibility, which leads me to probably one of the most impactful parts of the interview for me, and that was when we talked about what if your answer is I don't know. And that hit a huge chord with me. I really loved his answer. It's like it is the most irresponsible answer you can give someone. It's like such a fucking setup. I don't know. And the reason why it hit home for me is because that was my pet answer for years. I really didn't fucking know. It was like, hey, babe, what's your fantasy? And I was like, okay, so they want to know how to win with me. I finally figured that one out. It took 8 years. But in the meantime, I'm just like, look, dude, just try something. I'll tell you if I like it. It was so annoying to me because it confronted the fact that I didn't know. Right. I didn't have a good answer for them and put me on the defensive. Mm-hmm. But it is a setup because then that person has to guess and then I get to nail them to the cross when they get it wrong. Mm-hmm. And I had no idea like what a manipulation that was. And oh, by the way, for those of you who are around people who tend to be manipulative, here's something you need to know. Most people don't know they're being manipulative.
Yeah,
it's why we always deny it when someone accuses you of being manipulative. You're like, what the fuck? I'm not It's because it's a subconscious thing. People don't know that they're being manipulative. Really,
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
always think that manipulative people know exactly what they're doing. Half the time they don't. They're the last ones to find out they've been manipulative. So just consider that a little bit. You know,
Be gentle.
so I had to feel into what he said, and I had a shame attack a little bit. Like, fuck.
What did he say? What was his answer?
When I asked him about it later, I believe in the interview, he said, a better answer is, I don't know, but I'm willing to find out.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I don't know. I need more information. I don't know. Will you help me? It's like, I don't know. Where do you think I should begin? I don't know. Can you ask that in a different way? Mm-hmm. That is taking responsibility.
Bringing in more curiosity.
Yeah, I wish I would have been given that tool, because
Early on.
I could have grown so much quicker. I could have been responsible for myself and for my feelings and for my desires had I known better. So that has had me really deep in reflection since I came up.
I love that. That's so sweet.
Yeah, it was really sweet, and I feel really tender towards that younger part of myself that I didn't know.
Yeah,
I hold her with so much love in that inexperience of not having anyone to ask those things to get support from.
Exactly.
It really brings up a lot of tenderness. And I think that's actually what this whole BDSM Tantra thing is really all about. It's actually getting really tender. It's getting really real. It's getting vulnerable. And it's through this lens, I'm finding a big hell yes. Even that piece around humiliation. I was starting to go there earlier. I didn't get why people would want to be fucking humiliated. I'm cursing a lot in this post show. I hope you guys are enjoying it. Sometimes I just gotta throw it around. It's just out in it, So yeah, this thing about humiliation, I didn't get it. Like, why would anyone want to be told their dick is small and their all this like mean stuff? It just sounded mean, and it went against my kind of Pollyanna, be nice.
Yeah, totally.
Belief,
your inner
my
nice
core,
girl.
Yeah, my nice girl. But then when he started talking about like the slut shaming, and I was getting turned on, like, yeah, fucking tell me I'm a little fucking slut, and tell me what to do, and bend over and lift up your skirt and do this and do that, you nasty little girl. I don't know why, but I started to be like, I am open to this. When's Matt getting home? It's time somebody was the boss of me. Okay, let's bring on the slut shaming.
Dirty little girl.
Dirty little slut. And I realized, I've had a couple days to think about this. I was so afraid of being corralled into the slut space coming of age and in high school. I think because I knew how deep my sexual wanting and needing and desire, like there was such a huge part of me that was so horny and so wanted it, and I was so afraid of sex because I knew the minute I really had it, I was afraid I'd be out of control, that I was going to want it all the time. And so I maneuvered myself in all of these positions to try to strategize not falling into that place, like to the point where I'd be making out and being in a sexual situation, and then my clit would, as soon as I'm starting to peak towards an orgasm, I would get a click, 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 click feeling pulse in my clitoris, and that was like my fight, flight response, and it was, get the fuck out of here right now. And so I would somehow get out of that sexual situation immediately, and I would bolt. Or I'd play the game, just the tip. Sorry, I cannot have my virginity taken until I don't have to worry my mother that I'm going to have a teenage pregnancy. Like, that was the big goal. My mom had 4 daughters. She was only going to be a success if she got all 4 of us out of high school without getting pregnant. And I took that to heart. Like, I was like, wow. I can't disappoint my mom. Plus, I had an older brother who was given the job, you have to protect your sisters at all costs.
Right.
So he would either beat up every boyfriend or beat up me. Okay. And that was really stressful. And then I had some of my best friends were the slutty girls. And everyone was they were so good at blowjobs. And I just couldn't understand why the boys weren't showing up to school with roses for her and chocolates and taking her out to the movies. Like, why weren't they worshiping the ground she walked on?
Yes, that is a big thing that we need to really start to teach the young men. If there's good inner intimacy and interaction and sexual intercourse going on between you and your teenage girlfriend, you know, you should really be revering her.
Yeah, or your teenage hookup. The fucking slut in school should be the
queen.
The queen of the homecoming ball. Like,
That's
she
right.
should be, someone should be picking her up in a goddamn limo and taking her to school. Like, she should be lavished. She should be the most popular girl in school.
I love it.
She should just be adored, and instead she is publicly humiliated.
Yeah.
And it kills me. And I couldn't bear, my nervous system could not bear having those rumors, because I was around all my brother and all his friends. I heard what they said. Yeah.
And it's very interesting. That brings up such a good point. It's like how many of us, even subconsciously, like now that you're sharing all these details of your teen years, I'm like, boy, I didn't even have consciousness about any of that. You know, how many of us just unconsciously walked through the world like, I'm not going to be that, you know, because I don't want to be shamed or pointed a finger at. I don't want to have the scarlet letter on me, you know.
Right. The scarlet letter. God, that's what influenced that stupid book has been.
Yes, exactly.
You know? Jesus Christ.
And that's history, you know, that's what we're coming off of. And so, you know, to revere the high school slut, to like bring her in the limo, really give her the crown of sexual sovereignty. I mean, that would be a completely different,
what a culture change, you know.
Yeah.
Like,
shift.
Oh my God. So when I took inventory of that. It was like, I grokked how much I repressed and rejected my inner slut, my inner freedom sexual goddess, my slutty inner goddess. Like, you know, I understand why. And now I'm at a place where that is so healed that I totally want my inner slut to be played with. I want to kink that shit out.
Do it, girl.
I'm going to. I've been talking to Matt about it, and I'm just like,
I bet you're getting really turned on.
I just want like all the dirty stuff told to me. I want to just be used. Use me.
Yes.
I want to play out what I wanted to actually play out and didn't let myself.
School, in your early sexual years.
Much fear. I was so afraid.
Wow.
It was really debilitating. Like when I really grok how deep that was for me, and why Tantra sort of healed and resurrected a part of my, I got to claim that, but I had to claim it first in this like goddessy way, right? I had to like put on this archetype to make it okay. And now I'm ready to take off the archetype and put on like the nasty archetype, and from a place of power, not from a place of anything else. Like it really feels clean and healthy.
Yeah. So authentic.
Yeah.
You're really ready for it.
Thanks. You brought like all this up for me.
I know.
And so then it had me thinking, okay, well, if that makes sense to me, then yeah, it does make sense that like for a lot of men, their greatest fear is someone being able to satisfy their partner more than they can, or their partner leaving someone for a bigger dick, or you know, this fear around this small dick thing, because I've worked with so many men and who are so obsessed and afraid of that. And I've always had so much compassion, like, but you don't realize you can be as big as you want, you know?
Right.
But to now make the bridge and go, oh, okay, there's actually a lot of healing in just owning it.
Yeah. And to just go there. Okay.
You
do have a small dick. It is tiny. It is teeny. Let's talk about it. Let's get into it.
It's never going to satisfy anybody.
Yeah,
you know?
Let's go to the fucking shadows around it.
Yeah. And then to have them get off on it. What freedom.
Yeah, total. It's amazing.
It's amazing.
I don't know if you've listened to the book by 𝐃𝐨𝐧'𝐭. It's I can't remember the name, but she tells a story. She's a dominatrix, and she tells a story about the most boring session of her life. And he had a tiny dick, and it was the tiniest one she'd ever seen, right? And he wasn't saying anything up front like, I want to work this out. He just instead had this huge ego wall up around around this and he was super insecure about his tiny dick. So at some point during the session when it wasn't going well, she just all of a sudden out of nowhere, she just started poking fun at his teeny tiny little prick and how it was, you know, this and that and all of his worst fears. And it ended up being one of the best sessions she has ever done. So it was just really cool to hear that story.
Isn't that just remarkable? So I feel like he's opening doors that I have been too afraid to see what was on the other side. And now I realize what a path to like real healing, like it can transcend something that I've been too limited to see, too afraid to understand, because I couldn't find the place in my mind where it made sense. And he is such an interesting, because he's so straight to the point and he's got this real, like a certain masculine essence.
Yes.
That he really holds, where I can see how people would get triggered by it. I personally want to lean into it. I really find it refreshing to be around an unapologetic man who just says what he wants. And I hope you've taken advantage of that. You're about to take advantage of his free gift. I've been actually poking around in it myself.
Nice.
He's got a Mighty Networks community.
Great.
And you get a login to check out some of his content. And there's this one series that's called How Do I Get Her to Miss Me?
Ooh, love that.
And he does 3 parts on it. And he opens it up. It's fucking hilarious. It's so typical of him. He goes, it's the most idiotic questions anyone has ever asked me ever. I mean, are you fucking serious? This is the stupidest question. But because it keeps on coming back, I suppose I should suspend the idiocy of this idea and just talk on it. So I've come up with 3 points. You know, it's just like,
that's so
classic of him. And I just go, God, I think I really love him.
Yeah, he's just so straight to the point.
So straight talk, you know.
God bless that.
I know.
Yeah. We don't need to sugarcoat every fucking thing.
No, we don't. Sometimes it's just like, get to the heart of it, and you don't have to like him. I just hope you respect him.
Yeah, it brought up a lot for Leah and I. We'd love to hear from you if it brought up anything for you. This is a great place and a great opportunity to converse and to explore and to, share vulnerably. Like, what did it bring up for you? It brought up a lot for Leah. She just shared with us.
I think it's going to be marinating in me for a while. This is not going to be the last time you hear from me about
the BDSM realm.
Yeah, there's some doors unlocking.
Yeah, for me, it just brought up a lot of excitement. I've already been kind of like, I think that's what's next for me. So.
Okay, well, let's go to a seminar in New York.
Okay, let's do it.
Or actually, for the teacher training, you should come up here and we should maybe get a private session with them.
Ooh, that'd be fun. Except I think I'll be in Europe.
Oh, you might be in Europe. Yeah.
Let's definitely. You probably will see Leah. You're going to see Leah and I in your training soon for sure. Yeah. And for those of you listening to the episode, chime in and let us know what it brought up for you over in the Instagram Sex Reimagined. We would love to hear from you there.
Yeah. Love, 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 love.
Thanks for tuning in. If the hosts seem to know what they were talking about, that's because they do. Leah Piper is a tantric sex master coach and a positive psychology facilitator. Dr. Willow Brown is both a Chinese and functional medicine doctor and a Taoist sexology teacher. Don't forget, your comments, likes, subscribes, and suggestions matter. Let's realize this new world together.